another fierce, independent woman is now on your resume with Molly's Game. What is it about that type of role that attracts you?
The first #1 thing that attracted me to this script was Aaron Sorkin. I'm an actor who I love working to move the needle in some way with my film choices, with looking at society. And Aaron Sorkin he's a political filmmaker. You look from the beginning of his writing, he's someone who writes about social justice prevailing against the odds. And I have always, it's been like #1 on my bucket list to work with him. And so for me, #1, that's what drew me to this project.
You know, it was about a year ago we were talking about Miss Sloan, and in that interview I said Miss Sloan felt like sort of an Aaron Sorkin type script. So it's so fun for me now to see you in an Aaron Sorkin movie.
Right? Yeah, that's what I kind of always aspired to. Aaron Sorkin, the way he writes, there's so much musicality, pacing, rhythm, like the way he's able to set things up. It's so thoughtful, and that's what good writing does. It's not like cheap and disposable. It really, there's so many layers and levels to it. And I've learned more now about what he wrote in the script than I knew 6 months ago. I've learned more now than I did yesterday by talking to Idris and the dynamics of the gender power struggle. And I think we'll know more. It'll show us another way into society even 6 months from now. I think it's the kind of script that will continue to evolve, continue to enlighten us. And that's what truly is a great writer and now filmmaker, director.
Well, I was going to ask you about that. When you get an Aaron Sorkin script and he's also going to make his directorial debut, what concern level was there for you with him being his directing debut?
None. I had absolutely zero concern. I've worked a lot of my career with first-time filmmakers, and I love writer-directors. Aaron Sorkin has always been a filmmaker. He's been on sets with such incredible directors. The idea that he wouldn't have picked it up, I didn't, for me, there was no risk. And in fact, when I saw the film the first time, I saw it and I called him up and I said, I'm kind of mad at you. And of course, he was really nervous because he was showing it to me the first time and he was nervous about my reaction. And he goes, well, why? And I said, in movies this whole time, you could have been directing, think about all these movies that we didn't get because you didn't feel you were ready. But he absolutely is a filmmaker. He has his singular style. When you look at an Aaron Sorkin script, he has his style. It's really intelligent. You know, there's a pace, there's a movement to it. And when you see this film, you'll see that his directing style actually matches his storytelling style. The way he edits, how he cuts back and forth. He really is a storyteller, and I'm excited to see what he directs next because I know he's just starting off on this one.
Beyond the obvious of the plot of Molly Bloom being in charge of this poker game and working her way up through the system and becoming very wealthy and prominent on her own, what kind of message do you hope somebody like me or an audience member gets out of the movie?
Well, I think there's many layers to this story. First, Aaron Sorkin could have, he was a very successful, one of the most successful men in our industry. He could have told any story he wanted to tell. I am an actor who for years, there are filmmakers that I wanted to work with. And then I look at their IMDb and I realize they don't tell films with female protagonists. Aaron Sorkin, with everything he could have done, people would have paid attention. And he chose to tell this story about a woman in an industry that was ruled by rich, powerful men and how she had to navigate their rules to try to find success when it would change based on their whims. He decided right now to tell that story for his directorial debut. So that, I think, is an important thing to look at. And hopefully it'll inspire our industry to reach out from just the small world of what they are and what they know and kind of look at other stories out there. Second, I think it's important to look at this film with its themes of what patriarchy is, from the family. You look at Molly in her family situation, in her industry, and in the government. The family, her father is the moral authority, and she has to follow his rules. We come to learn later on that it was hypocritical. Her industry, her trying to navigate those waters, and the players made the rules and they would change. And in the government, excluding her lawyer, but the people who were trying to prosecute her, how those rules kept changing. And finally, it's at the end where Molly says, I'm done playing by these rules and I'm just gonna be who I am. And if I go to jail, I go to jail, but I'm done kind of navigating this. And I find that very exciting as a woman to see that on screen.
I want to ask about, well, I could ask about a dozen scenes, but I want to ask particularly about the one I thought was maybe one of the standouts. You, Idris Elba in the courtroom, the switch seat scene is just masterful, not only in the dialogue, but just the way it plays out, like you said, the editing, everything about that scene is fun.
It was so fun to play that scene. It felt like I was in a Katharine Hepburn movie. I loved working with Idris. I love, of course, Aaron's dialogue, but I love, a lot of these scenes, they're funny and they're charming, but you think about also the other stuff that's going on in there. In our film, it deals a lot with how a woman presents herself. So Molly changes everything about herself to try to gain the respect and the success in the poker world. And then also in that scene, she has Idris's character telling her, you got to change the way you look. So 2 times in our film, men are telling Molly that she's not dressed appropriately. I find that really interesting. And I love that in Aaron's script that you'll see a scene, you think oh, this is really fun and the dialogue back and forth, and there's a lot of comedy in here. He's always got his layers of social commentary, which is really, for me, it's the most wonderful work I could be working on.
Well, let me ask you about Idris Elba. We've been admiring him for years, and he always does diverse projects like you do. What about him, now that you've worked with him, what could you share with us about him?
He's fun. He works really hard. There is, I know everyone's going to know it when they see the movie. There is a speech he gives in this film that is so incredible. And, Aaron Sorkin dialogue is tough because it's like Shakespeare. It's so layered. There's so much going on. There's a rhythm. Shakespeare has iambic pentameter, and you've got to keep the rhythm because there's a payoff. And Aaron Sorkin's dialogue is like that. You keep this rhythm because it sets up what happens here. It's already difficult to do, but Idris did it with an accent. And he's funny, and he's serious, and he's such this incredible presence in this film. And he's really thoughtful in terms of our industry and where we're heading and where we're going and what we need. And I hope this is the first of many projects to work on with Idris. He just finished directing a film, and I'm excited to see that because I truly believe he's going to make a great director as well.
And Kevin Costner, we can see glimpses of him through the movie, and then without spoiling it for anybody, toward the end, you and he have a really nice scene together. I'm sure you grew up watching him. I'm sure he wouldn't like to hear that, but in terms of ages. But tell us about working with Kevin Costner.
Oh, it was wonderful to work with. I was shocked when Aaron told me that Kevin Costner was going to play Molly's father in the film. I admire him so much. Dances with Wolves is such a beautiful film, and I remember seeing it as when I was starting to develop my passion for filmmaking and cinema. He was so generous on set. Aaron would secretly tell me that Kevin would say, you can put the camera here and da-da-da-da, and Aaron said, that's a good idea, and then he would do it. But then Aaron would let everyone know that was Kevin's idea. And then Kevin will go over to him and say, you don't need to give me credit, it's yours. He's a team player. He was beautiful. That scene in the park, he breaks my heart at the end of the scene. And it's a lot of people, I think they see the film and they think that Molly has an epiphany. It's like her change in that scene, but actually it's a come to Jesus moment for for Kevin's character, because you start out, he thinks like he's so slick, he knows everything, and at the end of the scene, without giving away any spoilers, he's the one that needs to be comforted, and he's the one apologizing. And I think it's an incredible arc for Kevin to play, and I think he hits it out of the park.
As we wrap up, I always have to ask an awards question since we're an awards website. Your cast, The Help, Octavia won back then. This past February, Emma Stone and Viola Davis win. What's going through your mind when you see co-stars from one of your most iconic movies all getting that kind of recognition?
Well, I'm really proud of those girls. I love them. They're my family. I agree with them winning awards. But also, too, what it makes me do is that I want to acknowledge our director, Taylor, because I know I auditioned for that movie over and over and over again. Octavia had to work super hard. Like, I don't think any of us were the first choices for those parts. And Taylor, our director, fought for us. I saw firsthand how he fought for me. I knew the stories of how much he fought for Octavia. And I don't think he gets enough credit because he put together a cast of actors that I hope, because I believe they deserve it, will have very long careers. But being on that set, I was so inspired by them. I continue to be like, they fill my heart. I love those girls. And that's Taylor 100%. You cannot take away from what he did, because there were many times I said, okay, that's it. I can't audition for this part anymore. It's clear the studio doesn't want me. And Tate was the one that was really, really in my corner, pushing me forward.
Well, you've got to be next. We want you with an Oscar. Come on.
I don't know. My favorite actor, listen, my favorite actress is Isabelle Huppert. My favorite actor is Gary Oldman, and they've had very long careers. And I believe they have been underrated in their careers. So for me, I can't look at it in that way because, like I said, my favorite actors have not been recognized for their work.
We met Isabel last year after the Globes. You were in that same category with her, and she was just over the moon winning the Globe that night. And Gary Oldman, I just saw in Darkest Hour this week. I don't know if you've seen it yet, but just wait to be. It's like Daniel Day-Lewis and Lincoln amazing. It's one of his best ever.
But he's always been like that from the very beginning. I mean, the wonderful thing about Gary is, and he's been a great inspiration for me as an actor, is his ability to play characters different from himself. He changes his voice. He changes his body, his physicality. He's not a personality actor. He's someone who's really interested in the stranger. And I started my career looking at him as someone like, that's how I want to mold or try to shape my career, because it's such a great inspiration to me. So I hope he is recognized because I think it's about time.
Well, you too. We feel the same way.
Oh, thanks.
But thanks for doing this again. I hope everybody goes out and sees Molly's Game, because it's exactly what you would hope it be from your performance, Idris, Kevin, and then Aaron is just at the top of his game right now.
Absolutely. I'm so impressed with what Aaron did.